And with that, we welcome you inside College Football Live. Heather, Roddy, Sam, Zubin here with you. In the 2 days since the bracket has come out, the only two words anybody seems to be talking about are permanently damaged. Those were the words used by Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bevacqua about his team being left out of this bracket. The teams you do see there, we will discuss in detail. Yes, you see two G5 teams. We'll discuss it. Yes, you do see Miami. We'll discuss it. And yes, you see Alabama. We will discuss it all. But here's the thing, starting with Notre Dame. They have gone out of their way, Bevacqua, the AD. He doesn't blame Miami. They have to politic just the way the Irish did. But he does blame the CFP selection process, the ACC, of which they're a partial member, and Commissioner Jim Phillips. And he's been on the warpath lately.
You ask anybody in college football, we're one of the best teams in the country. We're one of those handful of teams that could absolutely win the national championship this year. And then standing up here today, knowing that we have 0% chance of proving that on the field is a bitter pill to swallow. With these weekly shows and weekly rankings, very strong signals are being sent. Okay, Notre Dame, in the first ranking, you are 10th at 6-2. Well, we did nothing from that point until last Sunday, but to prove to the world that we've gotten better each week, progressed each week, have the best player in the country on our team in Jeremiah Love. We've done everything from that point, not even to put into question whether we should stay at 10 or get better. To me, all the empirical data in the world suggests we should get better. In that first week of the CFP rankings, if we were 17th or 16th or 19th behind Miami, all right, we know where we are. It's going to be an uphill climb. This is going to be tough, right? I don't know if we can get in. Let's start thinking about, well, what's next? Let's keep winning. Let's keep doing, but at least we know where we stand. That's why we felt like we had the rug pulled from underneath us. We thought we knew where we stood week in and week out. And then, oh, by the way, here we go. Here's the selection show. Just kidding.
You can hear it in the tone of his voice. Now, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips had this to say about some of Bevacqua's comments. Quote, the University of Notre Dame is an incredibly valued member of the ACC, and there's tremendous respect and appreciation for the entire institution. With that said, when it comes to football, we have a responsibility to support and advocate for all 17 of our football-playing member institutions. And I stand behind our conference efforts to do just that leading up to the College Football Playoff Committee selections on Sunday. At no time was it suggested by the ACC that Notre Dame was not a worthy candidate for inclusion to the field. Let me give you the ChatGPT translation of that. Notre Dame was very upset that it seemed like the ACC was politicking hard, very hard for Miami, and not really buffering up Notre Dame, and that's why Phillips responded the way he did. Roddy, let's start with you here. We have had a full 3 days to discuss all the bluster. You heard from Phillips, you heard from Bevacqua, you heard Notre Dame's not going to participate in a bowl game. What do you make of all of this as college football now faces an even more uncertain future moving forward?
Well, I don't blame Pete Bevacqua or any of Notre Dame fans for feeling the way they felt because of the way the system was set up with the weekly rankings. I agree. They were sent the wrong signals. And that's the thing that the ACC was yelling the entire time. This should have mattered before the final rankings, but it didn't. And I think the feelings are really raw right now. Pete Bevacqua saying that the relationship with the ACC has been damaged. Let's not forget, back in 2020, when Notre Dame was going to be left out in the cold, the ACC let Notre Dame join as a full football member that year. They played for the ACC championship game. They had the ACC Coach of the Year in Brian Kelly. So when Notre Dame needed a hand, the ACC was there to lend it to them. I think the feelings are raw right now. I would imagine the relationship between Notre Dame and the ACC is going to be fine. The thing is, though, this should never have been a Notre Dame versus Miami conversation. If you look at the Venn diagram of best teams as seen by FPI and SP+, Miami and Notre Dame are better than Alabama. If you look at the side of the most deserving, Alabama's resume stands out. Miami has the head-to-head over Notre Dame. Miami is in both of those things. They are at the intersection of that Venn diagram. So the debate should have been between Notre Dame and Alabama. And to me, Sam, Alabama should have been left out. But because you had them ranked where you did before the SEC championship game, it would have seemed like you were punishing them for playing poorly in the championship game if you did indeed leave them out.
Yeah, I don't agree with the last statement you made about leaving Alabama out compared to Notre Dame, because if you look at Alabama, yes, you could talk about Miami and Notre Dame having a lot of the similar strength of schedules, but Alabama's was way ahead when it comes to strength of schedule. Look at the teams that Alabama played. Specifically, they played Georgia, the best win in college football, had a run where they beat Tennessee and Vanderbilt. The list goes on, right? Whereas what did Notre Dame do? Notre Dame had 2 opportunities at the beginning of the season to prove that they were one of the best teams. They lost to Miami and they lost to A&M. And all of a sudden, when Miami and Notre Dame are next to each other, both teams are 10-2. Both teams have a similar strength of schedule. Both teams have a similar strength of record. Both teams have played similar opponents. Now all of a sudden it's like, man, what do we do? How do we figure out which team should get and which team isn't? Oh, both teams played each other and one team won, one team didn't. And so Notre Dame shouldn't have an issue with Miami being put ahead of them, at least when it comes to, okay, the final teams, who should be the final teams. I understand the frustration when you see yourself higher up in the standings, but we also have to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is this: just because you are good and getting better doesn't mean that other teams can get better as well. That's an issue that Texas was saying. Texas was like, man, we're one of the best teams. Okay, well, Texas, you're going to take out Miami. Miami played forward and beat Miami. You're going to take out Alabama. You're going to take out Notre Dame. So, yes, I understand Notre Dame's frustration from seeing the early season rankings, but when you boil down to it and say, okay, if we're looking at between us and Miami, we're very, very similar. Miami wins. Between us and Alabama, man, they've played a much tougher schedule, so that's why Alabama got the nod.
I don't disagree with the Alabama getting the tougher schedule. I mean, strength of schedule, strength of record, they stand out. But we're consistently told that it is the best teams. We are ranking the 12 best teams in the country, or the 10 best teams in the country. The metrics that measure best, and the ones that we use the most, SP+, Miami and Notre Dame are top 10 SP+ teams. Miami's sitting there at 13. FPI, Alabama is lower than both Miami and Notre Dame. And you look at the way that they're playing, Alabama's been leaking oil the last month. So if we were putting the best teams in, it would be Notre Dame and Miami.
Well, the issue I have with that statement is that you could make the same argument about leaking oil, at least offensively, about Oklahoma. Oklahoma is another team that has struggled offensively over the last 4 to 5 weeks. Yet their defense has been solid. But because they played on the field and they beat Alabama, because they played on the field and got a chance to win when it mattered the most against stiff competition later in the season, they proved that they belong. And so, yes, the metrics stay with Notre Dame beating who they beat, like Syracuse with the backup quarterback put up 70 points. Yeah, those metrics look good, but also look who you're playing.
Fair enough. Before we get into Notre Dame opting out of a bowl game and the ramifications of that, Heather, I want to come to you. Right before the program, I heard you say, as we were just chatting to take the viewers behind the curtain a little bit, this was the most unpredictable final Sunday you've ever covered, and you've been on this since the playoff began in 2014. Can you take us inside that a little bit? Because you've got access that only many people at home and the 3 guys here sitting with you would love to have.
Sure, and the reason I said that was because historically speaking, how you play in conference championship games has always mattered. I said that every day in the week leading up to it because the committee is upstairs from where I'm sitting watching. And the fact that how Alabama played in that SEC championship game did not impact them stunned me. And I thought that they would still be in because they beat Georgia during the regular season, but I thought they would at least drop. That's why, if you saw the meme, I could not believe that Alabama didn't drop, because that impacted everything else. Because Bama didn't drop, there was no buffer between Notre Dame and Miami that had been there all season long. And what you saw unfold is what I would have predicted with an Alabama win.
Fascinating, fascinating. All right, so now let's spin this forward, Roddy. I want to talk to you about Notre Dame opting out of their bowl game. They're not the only team to do it. Iowa State and Kansas State are as well. They've both been fined $500,000, but those programs are also going through coaching changes, and they're also not named Notre Dame. Let's just be real. So take us through your thought on the Irish opting out of a bowl game with BYU, essentially putting an abrupt end to a season that they feel could have ended with a national title.
Felt like it was petty, it was childish, it was a bit of a corporate temper tantrum, if you will. And I think of two groups of people in this scenario. One is the seniors who are not going to play in the NFL, who didn't know they were playing in the last game ever in Pac-12 or ACC after dark. against Stanford. They thought there was postseason, whether it was CFP, which they probably thought because all the signals that the committee was sending would have said CFP, but or it could have been a bowl game. Those seniors just had the rug pulled out from under them by not being able to put on the Golden Dome another time. And think about young Notre Dame fans. I'm not saying that sports need to be our moral compass for everything, but a young Notre Dame fan who's trying to figure out, all right, what do I do when adversity hits me? He sees his coach, his athletic director, and his school that he's beloved not have something go their way, and they just pick up their ball and left. They just quit. And so what happens if they don't make the varsity? You just going to quit? What happens if something doesn't go your way? The example that's being set I really don't like. And I know that's not what our athletics are supposed to be anymore. I guess the curtain's been pulled back from that. But it's still, Notre Dame sees itself as higher than all that stuff, sees itself as one of the moral beacons, and they were not that in this case.
Yep, two really quick points. One, Bevacqua in his press conference today talked about how they give so much power to the players in terms of decisions like this, and that really played a role in it. The players had a big influence in that decision. And the second thing is, to your point, Roddy, do you remember when Florida State was snubbed from the college football playoff? Do you know what they did? They went and they played in that bowl game with a completely depleted roster. And in retrospect, I got to give them props for that.
I actually disagree with you, Heather, for the first time maybe in my life. I go back to that Florida State game, and I thought you were going one way. The point that I make is Georgia, and so Georgia had a 29 in 2023. Georgia had a 29-game winning streak going into the SEC game. They went and they lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. They got left out of the playoff, as did Florida State. They didn't lose in their championship game, but they got left out of the playoff. Florida State decided essentially not to show up to the game. A lot of people opted out. Georgia showed up to that game. They won 63-3. Since then, Florida State's record is 7-17. Since then, Georgia's record, I believe, is 23-4. Georgia's currently sitting right now at a top 14 with a bye week. They played in the college football playoff last year. Florida State is still trying to figure their things out. And so what I think this does, actually that's detrimental to Notre Dame, is it starts to believe that this external locus of control. All of a sudden you start placing blame as opposed to taking control of what you can control. I don't know what it's going to look like moving forward, but I do know that when Georgia decided to show up, despite it not being in their favor, they've been dominant ever since. And Florida State, a team that decided to opt out those players, it's been a little bit murky. So initially I was like, oh, I see the pettiness, but man, I think long term, to Roddy's point, of what will these players learn, and it may not be the best lessons moving forward.
No, and Florida State hasn't, their struggles are not because of that game. Their struggles are because they whiffed in the portal multiple times, particularly at the quarterback position. That wasn't caused by Georgia. That was caused by Mike Norvell and his staff. And in terms of the players, what Heather said, I love a player-led program. But to give the players that much say in whether or not you play in a bowl game, you are giving the people whose frontal lobe literally is not fully developed yet. These guys are not 25 when the frontal lobe is developed. So they are more emotional. They are more rash. You can't let the players decide this. The adults in the room need to step up and say it is right to play in the bowl game and finish what we started.
Okay, last word goes to, of all teams, another team that's got a bit of a gold palette, and that would be Vanderbilt, who finished with the same record as Notre Dame, 10-2. And what did Clark Lee say yesterday? I don't know about them, but our guys love playing football, and we can't wait to see Iowa in our bowl game. A little bit of a zinger. All right, so Heather, I want to go to you here because moving forward, there are some protections here in place for the Irish if the playoff were to remain 12 teams or even advance to 14 that would help Notre Dame avoid a situation like what happened on Sunday. Can you take us inside that?
Sure, that's right, Zubin. When ESPN and the College Football Playoff agreed to the 6-year deal that will begin in 2026, there are protections for Notre Dame that guarantee the Irish a spot in the College Football Playoff if they are ranked in the top 12 or in the top 14, if that's what the model is. So this won't happen again if that's the case. But there are also guarantees for the 4 Power 4 conference champions. So in theory, if it was next year, Duke would have been in the college football playoff. But we're all going to go ahead and assume the ACC fixes its tiebreaker situation by then, and we're going to have a different conversation.
Fair.
And I do feel some kind of way about hearing that Notre Dame gets protections of being in the top 12. And the reason that I feel that kind of way is I go and look at Notre Dame's schedule for next year. Remember, this year they started off with A&M and Miami. And yes, they do play Miami next year, but next year they start off with Wisconsin and Rice. And so all of a sudden you could pretty much slate out an easy schedule for Notre Dame and have these protections, not be battle tested, ease your way into the playoff, and then maybe you win in the playoff or maybe you lose. So that rubs me some kind of way.
The Notre Dame temper tantrum makes more sense. They're used to getting what they want, and they'll essentially be treated like a conference champion going forward, which was the big thing that they weren't treated as before this. So, yeah, it makes more sense now.
Fair enough. Last word. This current format, just a reminder to the Irish, was put together by the CFB commissioners and Notre Dame. Sometimes you got to live with the results.
Day forward, we're going to wake up every single day in this football program, and we're going to build championship habits. But we're going to do it one day at a time. And we're going to do it from the ground up. And we're going to do it in a football program that's going to demand toughness, mental and physical toughness, demand discipline at every corner, and demand, most importantly, togetherness. One team, one program, unified to continue the great pride and the great tradition of Penn State football.
That is Matt Campbell. That is Sam and Roddy. Sam, I want to start with you here. Matt Campbell was 72-55 at Iowa State, one of the toughest jobs in America. Upon leaving, his athletic director on Friday night said, after 10 years, the guy deserves a statue in front of Jack Trice Stadium in Ames. But the expectation and the build are a lot different. But bottom line, this guy's a builder. You say he should be able to win anywhere, anytime using his methods.
Oh, without a doubt. Matt Campbell's a three-time Big 12 Coach of the Year. Has been at the program at Iowa State for a decade. Has had ample opportunities to leave to different college programs or the NFL, but he has a sense of loyalty. And all of a sudden, when this opportunity came up, after being at a place for a decade, building a program, Penn State decided to wait for 50-plus days to find a coach. And they found their guy. And I believe they found the right guy. People have questions about the 2026 season for Penn State. Penn State didn't hire Matt Campbell for 2026 alone. They hired him for the next 26 years. That's what they're trying to build. There's been 4 full-time coaches in the last 75 years at Penn State, since 1950. They're not trying to get it quickly. They're trying to get it right. And I think Matt Campbell is the right decision.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Sam. I think Matt Campbell is a great football coach, but this is a different beast than what he had at Iowa State. And he's going to be graded differently based on his results. You know, there were multiple times at Iowa State where they had really good teams were picked to win or to compete for the Big 12 championship game. They didn't do it. And Penn State has to be a team that recruits well and develops well. Only one ESPN 30 commit in this 2026 class, which is essentially a lost class for Penn State, with most of their commits or a lot of their commits ending up at Virginia Tech. So Matt Campbell's going to have to recruit at a level that he hasn't in the past. And without this recruiting class, there's going to be a hole in that roster that he is going to have to fix in the transfer portal. And that's not even counting all of the anticipated transfers that we are looking to see if it happens or not. The guys going from Penn State to Virginia Tech to follow a guy that a lot of the players loved in James Franklin.
Yeah, Roddy, you said that Matt Campbell is going to have to recruit well and develop well. Those are things that he does extremely well. Matt Campbell is a developer of people, especially when it comes to Iowa State. I got a chance to talk to him at Big 12 Media Day about 4 years ago when I first started at ESPN. And he was one of the first people complaining, kind of like Nick Saban, about all these transfers and how not even just transfers. He's like, man, even coaches, they don't want to develop players anymore. That's what he cares about. That's what I, as he was speaking, cares about. So that's one. And then number 2, if we can quickly show up Penn State's schedule for next year. You talked about being graded on a curve, graded at a different level. Well, Penn State has a relatively easy opportunity next year. Look at the first 3 games: Marshall, Buffalo, Minnesota, right? Then you got Purdue, Rutgers, right? These are some of the home games. Yes, you have Michigan, but I don't see Ohio State on there. I don't see Oregon on there. And so I think this season coming up for Penn State is a great opportunity, springing board for Matt Campbell, because the schedule keeps some of the tougher opponents off there for this year.
Yep. Keep in mind their recruiting class last week was sitting below. Go ahead, Roddy, you got something?
You better not lose. You better not lose. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, fair enough. I would just say one thing. Last week, National Signing Day, we showed the one commit. Their signing class last week, Penn State, was below South Dakota State of the FCS.